You got to continue to live. You got to continue to be the creator you are. Otherwise, you separate yourself from the creator.
Now is the time, and here is the place, when all is good and divine. Why must you worry, put lines in your face, when all that you do is just fine?
So, and that's what having power, empowerment, self-empowerment stuff, and having power just means being able to own that you are a creative spirit being. There's no limits other than the limits you create in your own mind, saying, I can't do that, or I'll never be able to do that, or whatever. And you don't have to try to do everything you know you can't do. No, you have to be true to yourself in terms of, oh yeah, what kind of activity, what kind of work, what kind of whatever do you need to do to support your evolvement, your awakening, your becoming more and more fully who you truly are as the eternal spirit that you are. And that's the fun part, folks. Don't take the fun out of your life. Now, don't get so serious and go, oh yes, I'm determined to be on my spiritual path. Spiritual path is nothing like that. I mean, none of us would ever make it if being on a spiritual path required you to be serious, grouchy, uptight person. Because the minute you're on a spiritual path, the first and foremost thing is just you're going to be closer to the spirit that you are, not further away. No, we start at the furthest away point of disconnection, if you will, and then as we decide we're not only willing, but we would like to get closer to ourselves. We would like to find out who I really am. Because, oh yeah, I've suspected for a long time, you think, I'm not this body, I'm not even this personality I wear every day to go to work or to be with my family or whatever. I'm the beingness, the essence, the energy, the life that's animating this body, this personality, this, whatever it is, love of ice cream. So that's what we're here to find out. Learning means learning. All learning is like breadcrumbs. And you follow those breadcrumbs by learning the lessons, and each time you learn the lesson, it brings you closer to who you are. Because before you get to know anybody else, and before you get to know God, you have to get to know yourself. Because your true self is the doorway to God, is the true portal. Some of you have long been interested in ascension. Yeah. I don't really bother with talking about ascension much because that part is a no-brainer. The tough part, the challenging part of life and our spiritual path is getting to that place where you're ready to ascend. You're not going to make yourself ascend. No. Ascension is not ego-centered, which means me, I'm gonna ascend. You're not gonna be even ready to ascend until you're able to drop that part. Go, oh yeah, that's funny. If you're trying to ascend, it's definitely, trust me, it's not going to happen. That ascension is the final stage where you get picked up. Not by a UFO. It's not like a abduction or anything. No. You get picked up, you can say, by that which is divine. That which is eternal, unlimited, and undivided. Because you get picked up, because you put yourself right there at the threshold to be able to be picked up. Yeah. That's the real meaning of being chosen. In human terms, it's not quite there, but it's close enough. Because when you're chosen, you don't make yourself chosen, right? No, you can't. No, none of us could do that. We do what we do. And if what we do and how we live and where we're at and everything is ripe for the picking, ripe for the choosing, then we ascend. So you don't have to worry about the ascension itself. You just have to get yourself to the front door of it. Yeah. And so that's why I teach how I teach, and why I teach what I teach, is to help people go through the trek to get to that place where you get picked up. And you're not going to get picked up by waiting. It's okay, I'm ready, pick me up, and being a couch potato in the meantime. No, you got to continue to live. You got to continue to be the creator you are. Otherwise, you separate yourself from the creator. Yeah? So, which brings me to, when you're afraid of making a mistake and therefore not taking the next step that you need to take, or that you'd like to take, what are you waiting for? Oh, you want some certainty, isn't it? Yeah, clarity and certainty. I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what's best for myself to do next, right? That's all we want when we think that waiting for it is going to bring it to us. No, waiting doesn't bring us anything. Waiting for God doesn't bring God to us, because God doesn't have to come to us. God is already within us. We have to seek that which we're, what would you say, wanting, and find it within, not out there, not up in the sky, not up in the clouds, not somewhere else besides you. And that's why you have to be able to communicate to yourself and with yourself and relate fully with who you are inside to be able to have the door open. That's the magic open sesame to God, right? So if you can't stand yourself, if you're punishing yourself because you made a bad mistake, you're regretting, you're disappointed in yourself because you've been such a failure, guess what? That door is locked tight. It's not going to open. The only way you can open that door inward is when you are loving yourself. And you're going, respecting yourself. Isn't respect a major aspect of love, right? Is there a single person or animal that you absolutely love that you don't have great respect for? Yeah, it's not, separate. So, how much do you respect yourself? Not when you're blaming yourself and holding yourself guilty and responsible for causing all kinds of problems, and this is wrong, you know, this is what's wrong with you. Another thing, having some kind of an illness, especially something like the big C. In my case, it's the big L, right? Leukemia is a much longer word. Doesn't that sound more impressive than cancer? But anyway, I'm not making fun of people who end up going through this experience, because it's not naturally a fun experience. I'm sure you can tell. But, what am I to learn from it? So many people, especially people who know me, just couldn't believe. How can, of all people in the world, Michael end up with cancer? How can he end up not only with just any old cancer, but just this particular form of leukemia that is, you know, the most aggressive and all that kind of stuff? Well, guess what, folks? I have good news for you. Well, for me. is okay. My first prognosis, life expectancy, when I first got admitted to the hospital and everything, and they realized what the diagnosis was at that point I had about 2 to 3 weeks to live. But even at that point, the good news was, if you do this, this, and this, or whatever, then you can, you know, if you do one thing that extends the 2 to 3 week life expectancy to 2 to 3 months. I thought, whoa, that will give me a little more time. Because at that point, I'm looking at time I have here on Earth, in this body, to prepare everything as much as I can while I'm still functional, so I can leave and not leave everybody completely stranded or anything like that, right? Yeah, I know, even if I just dropped it all of a sudden, everybody's gonna deal. But hey, why not make it a little easier, right? That was my thinking at that point. And then, if I did what I'm going through now, it will push that life expectancy to more time. But even then, it's like, what is it? The statistics play out to 20%, maybe? 20% of the people my age. And who don't have other, what's that word? It's a very strange word. Comorbidity. Comorbidity? Something like that. It apparently means pre-existing other health, physical conditions. Then each time you add, you have this other condition, heart condition, you have this blood sugar condition, all kinds of stuff, and that starts to minimize the life expectancy. So, but even without those pre-existing other conditions, a person with this AML, with treatment and everything, the statistics is something like 20% of those my age and above live 3 years or more. So percentage-wise, that's not a really good batting average, is it? But, so what I had to really look at in the beginning is, okay, how much time do I need to get as much done as possible to get everything ready for my departure? Because the exit out of here, I'm not going to have any trouble with that part. But I wanted to leave those who are still going to be here, because I know when someone you love dies from this world, even if you're a very spiritually aware person and you know they don't really die, and you know you actually can't even get rid of them. It's not like, thank God he's dead and once and for all, we'll never have to hear from him again. No, it's not like that at all. And most of you, if you're tuning into this, already know that. But knowing it is one thing, but it's still difficult, isn't it? So this is something I started to look at when I was a kid. And when I went to my first funeral, it was not even somebody close to us. I don't know how I ended up in that funeral, but it was a, regular traditional funeral and a whole bit. And I'm sitting in the church pew and I'm seeing the so-called dead person above, several feet above the coffin. And the dead person is going, hey, hi everyone, it's really great to see you, type of a thing. Thank you for coming to my party. And everybody else is crying, they're angry, they're sad, it's just very, very emotional. And I'm going, what's wrong with this picture? That the person that everybody's being sad about is probably the happiest they've ever been in this lifetime. But everybody else is just torn apart. And that part I remember started my looking at. I didn't get to go to a lot of funerals or anything like that, but every time I had a chance, I looked at, okay, that's the person, that's the dearly departed. And generally, once in a while, you'll find a dearly departed that's not a happy camper. But they weren't a happy camper to start with. And it's just everybody else that's torn apart. So I realized, oh yeah, most people never get the education. They never learn what this whole so-called dying process is about. So then I'm still addressing that thing for some of you, many of you trying to make a major decision in your life, and you're a little stymied because you're afraid that you're going to make a mistake. You're not going to make the right decision about whatever. Right decision about if you have some kind of illness that's considered to be a terminal type illness or, often fatal illness. You might be really worried or concerned about making the right decision. Do you go with a medical way, or do you go with an alternative medical way, or do you go with a combo, thing, or do you go strictly no medicine on the allopathic level, but just all naturopathic, natural healing process? Or do you just go, you're a person of great faith, and you go, okay, no, God is the only healer. So that's what I'm going to do. So that brings me to this, what is our decisions based on? Well, most of you who know, you don't have to be Christian, but who know about the life of Jesus and the very famous, important quote from him of when he's being crucified and everything, it's one of the things he said, and everything he uttered during that time is steps for the process. And one of them he made very clear was, not my will, but thine. But people tend to take that out of context. Where he made that remark that got recorded and passed down through history was he made that remark in front of a couple of the disciples while he was praying. And he held the goblet of wine, and he's looking into it, and he's saying, if you can take this cup from me, God, I'd like that. But if it's your will that I go through with this whole thing, that's my choice. Your will, not mine. So those who know that and are trying to live in that way, I've watched for many years, and they try to make the decision according to God's will. Those of you who have a more Islamic type of a background in religion might go, Allah, this is Allah's will. This happened because of God's will. This happened, and what's going to happen is be all out of God's will, so it's out of my hand. People jump to all kinds of erroneous conclusions. So I wanted to go, okay, God's will. It seems very powerful and authoritarian, especially those who are raised in an environment where God is on a throne up there in his kingdom. And God has the thumbs up or thumbs down, right? Like Nero over your life. Oh, you? Oh. But it's not like that at all, is it? If you really start to ask yourself, oh yeah, God. One thing you ought to know is God, that which we call God, that's just a name, that's just a word, symbol, for that which is infinite, which means without any limits. There's no beginning or end to that which we call God. Which also means there's no time, right? It's timeless, beyond time, eternal, forever. Which means unchanging. God's not fickle. God can't be. If it's unchanging, steady as she goes. It doesn't ever change. It doesn't even hiccup. No, it's always the same. And in human ego terms, that sounds like, oh, but that makes God probably the most boring presence. Everything's the same all the time. Oh, it drive me crazy kind of a thing, right? No. When it's limitless, it just means it doesn't go in between being limited sometimes. Under certain conditions it's limited, but under other conditions it's limitless. No. Limitlessness means limitless all the time, throughout eternity, forever, in terms of earth terms. Because there's no time in God. There's no division. There's no two-ness, just one. Which means God's will can't be split. And God's will is never either or. It's never conditional. Anything that's conditional means it can go either way, right? Conditional means if you're this, then I love you. Unconditional means whether you do this or this or this, whether you're that way or look this way or act that way, that limitless, never-changing eternity doesn't waver. in the slightest. Doesn't even twitch. So what does that say automatically? If you know that much, what does that say about God's will? It's unwavering, unchanging. It doesn't go one way one day and the next day, oh, it happens to be nice and sunny today, so let's do this. It's not based on conditions at all. So if that's true, how can we not be living God's will? And that's where all the judgment starts popping up. But that serial killer obviously isn't living by God's will. Don't be so sure to jump to that conclusion. I'm not endorsing being a serial murderer or harming other people or anything like that. Remember, every life experience for each soul here. If you're incarnated here, you're here to learn through living life in this world. And everything you're learning is about yourself. So sooner or later, the worst criminals, worst, whatever, is going to learn by hook or crook. They're going to learn to start to realize, oh yeah, that's not who I am. I'm not at heart a killer. I'm not even interested in being cruel, abusive. And they start to learn, what made me seem to be that way? I mean, I've done horrible things to people and all kinds of stuff. They start to realize it might be lifetimes after lifetimes and lifetimes of doing that before they even start to turn the corner. But once they do, oftentimes what society might call the worst of the worst people are the fastest to learn once they turn the corner. Yeah? Up to turning that corner may take them a long time. But once they turn the corner, they're going to learn fast. Because it's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Even if they're an atheist, oh my God. It's, wow. It's mind-blowing, so to speak. And so then, God's will. We're all living already. We can't help it. We're living God's will. But what makes some people do what others might consider horrific stuff, terrible things, is they are not aware that they're living God's will, but what the horrific stuff and the very destructive stuff and the very divisive things and hurtful things that they end up doing is they're fighting living God's will. They don't realize there's no way out of it. There's no way out of living God's will. It's just a question of if you're willing to live God's will, that you already are living it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Or are you going to fight it all the way? And it'll make more sense when instead of talking about God's will, I talk about unconditional love. What is it about unconditional love that you love so much? If you're fortunate enough to experience it, even for a moment. Some of you have experienced it. The closest you've ever gotten to unconditional love was the love of a dog who bestows it on you. But some of you might have been fortunate enough to have experienced some of that with another human. Why is it so difficult to live unconditionally and unconditionally lovingly? Because unconditional love is unrelenting. If you're fighting it, it's unrelenting. And if you're fighting unconditional love, it makes you suffer. It's not the unconditional love that makes you suffer. No, it's your fighting it that brings suffering to you. Your resistance, your fear. Why would anybody fight anything? Especially unconditional love. They're afraid of it. They think it's going to take over. They're going to lose their freedom. They're going to lose their autonomy. And that's what a lot of people have trouble with God's will. The idea of God's will is, oh my God, God's will, you can't turn it down. Oh no, but free will is intrinsic to God's will. To me, free will, God's will, kind of the same thing. But free will, most people misinterpret as, well, I have free will. God gave me free will, so I could do whatever I feel like doing. I could hurt people, I could damage everything, I could ruin people's lives, because I feel like doing that. And guess what? They're partially right. Because God's will gives you free will. You could do whatever you choose. But, here's the big but, is once you do it, everyone knows, there's consequences. What we call consequences in modern terms is what was called karma. Okay. What goes around comes around. And karma is not for punishing anyone. It's for teaching. Karma teaches us. And it keeps on teaching us the same thing. Go within. Examine what you've done, and instead of feeling sorry for yourself that you did it, or guilty that you did it, or punishing yourself and blaming yourself for doing it, or hiding in shame from doing it, no, face it squarely. Oh yeah, I did A, B, C. What am I to learn from having done that? And then having seen the consequences of doing A, B, C like I did? Once you are honest with yourself, you get to the truth, and all is forgiven. Forgiveness isn't something like ascension. It's not something you make yourself do. No, it happens as a result. Just like ascension happens as a result. And when you... hang on a second. Raphael has a note for me. Yes. Raphael is saying that for those of you who are watching this later, missed the live talk, and that's the other reason I decided to do this Facebook Live. I wanted to update you on that I am alive still here, but let people know that if they missed the live talk today, I will post it on my Facebook site, the same site you're watching this on now, and later, so that they'll be able to access it anytime, right? And I'll pin it up so that for a few days they can access it easily. So anyway, what was I talking about? Raphael, do you remember what I was talking about? No. Okay. So that's gone. And so then, we're talking about God's will, and unconditional love is another way to look at it, because it acts the same way. God's will is unconditional love. and is unconditionally loving. So that's what gives us free will to choose what we decide to choose. But then the karma, oh yeah, I remember now, the karma, what comes around, goes around, comes around, is again to show you, oh, this is what you did, and this is the result of what you created before. Do you like it? Oh no, it's painful. Okay, you can't stand it. It's bad. Okay. Then, here's how you zero out the balance. People talk about karmic debt. So forgiveness is the way to zero out your balance. And again, forgiveness is not something you actively do or try to do. No, it's the thought of, okay, I need to forgive. That's important because that starts the process. But the completion of the forgiveness actually happens when you see the truth of the matter. When you see things for the way they really are, rather than through the lens of guilt, through the lens of blame, through the lens of any kind of judgment or competition, resistance, fear, whatever. Oh, isn't that what, real beginning meditation classes and teachings teach is, just sit there and empty your mind. Yeah. Isn't that almost the opposite of what most of us learned in grade school? Is somebody's always trying to fill our minds up with more knowledge. But meditation is, first step of meditation is, empty your mind. Don't fall into the trap. Don't go down the rabbit hole of following every little thought and worry and everything that pops up in your analytical mind. Then when you let it all pass by, you start to get into the present. You start to show up more for yourself, and you go, I'm living more now than ever before. So, in relationship to God's will and unconditional loving, I was saying the part that scares people is that it's unrelenting. And that's why people think love is painful. Love breaks your heart, and all those kinds of things. Because they're looking at the effects of unconditional love from the outside. It looks like it's painful, it's hurting. I mean, you could say, I've experienced the suffering because of love. Because love doesn't back off just because you go, stop, don't love me anymore. Right? It just keeps on coming at you. It's like the waves in the ocean. Just because you're drowning, it doesn't stop. But how do you keep yourself from drowning in the ocean against the constant onslaught of waves? The more you fight those waves, the faster you go down and faster you drown. You get wiped out and you drown. But if you learn that, you observe, the waves aren't trying to kill me. No, they're just being waves. Yeah. They're just saying hello in a way. Yeah, that's the waves being waves in the ocean, and just a way of saying, I'm here. I'm a wave. Now I'm gone. I was a wave. And so you misinterpret the wave as a threat. It's the wave that's making me drown. Because I was fine before the waves hit. No, that's erroneous. That's judgments and blame, right? No, okay. I'm drowning because I didn't know how to relate correctly to a wave. And once you realize that, you go, hey wave, show me how to relate to you in a better way so I won't have to drown. And the wave will just continue to be a wave and show you, this is what a wave is, this is what a wave is, this is what a wave is. And you learn, oh, the wave just goes right on through. Unless you're a really good surfer, then you can surf the wave, but no, just if you're kind of stuck out there and you just want to survive, make it through, and not drown, well yeah, let the wave just carry you and up and down and you go. And now you can keep your head above water, unless it's a, spectacular tidal wave or something like that. But even if it's a tidal wave, the only chance you have of surviving it at all is to let go, isn't it? And there's been, rare cases where a person stuck in a tidal wave just made it through miraculously. Because when you let go of all resistance, what you're doing is you're letting go of being afraid. And you're being trusting of yourself that, okay, if I let go and let myself just be as I am, instead of trying to do something, trying to be some different, someplace else, something else, blah, 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 you come back to yourself. And remember, you're a limitlessly creative, powerful being. You don't know what kind of miracles you'll be able to create. So, when it comes to God's will, you have to first address the fears you have about living God's will. The fears could range everything from, oh no, I don't want to be taken over, my control is gone, I'm not free to live the way I want to live, God's going to dictate everything, to fears of, oh, I'd like to live God's will, but I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Right? Yeah. I mean, we come up with all kinds of excuses. We have this amazing ability to create. Because we're so limitlessly creative, if you put your creativity toward creating more fear, more fear images, and more fear about what horrible things can happen to you, you're going to create them, and you're going to be that much more afraid, that much more worried, that much more anxious. And not because that's the way the world is these days. No, it's because of what you created in relationship to the way the world seems to you at any given time. But if you decide, oh no, I don't want to live this way, let's try out something different. And now we're back to what I started with earlier today, is just, oh yeah, making a decision to take your next step. Next step is always a new step, right? It's not the same old routine. It's, you're going, okay, I'm making a change in my life. I'm making a change in how I go about things. And you'll find that always involves your relationship. Not only who do you relate to, but how do you relate to everyone, especially yourself. So, I think on that note, give you something to chew on for a while, but it was a pleasure having you join me today, and I'm really happy to see all these names going by and saying hello in some way, shape, or form. And I hope that being here today gave you something to reflect upon, something that might have been helpful. Because for me, having this chance to communicate with all of you is what makes my day, what makes my life. To me, teaching is nothing more than sharing from my experience of life what I've learned. That's all. And since I'm continuing to learn enormous amount every day, I'm never at a loss. It's so simple because all I ever communicate about is, I'm sharing, this is what I learned so far. This is what I learned about this. This is what I learned about that. This is what I learned from this experience. And that experience could be having diagnosis of leukemia, or having a diagnosis of heart failure. Right? I look pretty good for a guy in chronic heart failure, right? That's one of the diagnoses I've had for years. So it's when you don't make it a mistake, when you don't make it bad, when you don't make it wrong, and you're not constantly thinking to yourself, what's wrong with me? Because life isn't going the way you expect it to go. No, it's not because something's wrong with you, ever. There's nothing wrong with you. It's because there's an experience there you're having to learn something from. So make most of all your experiences, whether you think at first it's a bad experience or a good experience. And if you're hung up on anything from your past of, this was a horrible trauma I had, horrible experience I had, I haven't been over it, I can't get over it, and all that stuff, take a look at it and go, that's first and foremost, that's the past. There's nothing you can do to change what you went through. Yeah? There's no easy Photoshop to rearrange the picture to make it different the way you like it to be. You can't change your transcripts of life. It's not set in stone, but it's set in the Akashic records that way. So don't bother trying to change the past. All you have to do is change the present. Make a new decision in the present, right here, right now, to bring about a different experience than the kind of experiences that you learn from that doesn't pay to keep on having those experiences, right? Yeah. So that's the experience. That's one of the fundamental lessons of any kind of illness, any kind of debilitating or compromising physical condition or mental condition or emotional condition or whatever it is. What can we learn from it? Don't make it bad. Don't make yourself a failure. Don't make yourself shortchange your worth or your power or your intelligence or your ability because you made a choice that ended up temporarily in a not so good place for you or for somebody else. All right? And if you are one of the people who are suffering from other people blaming you and throwing guilt at you and try to make you responsible and for something that you did years ago or whatever, don't be so hard on yourself. You don't need to. Somebody else is already doing that for you. And you have to ask yourself, what am I to learn from people doing that towards me? Yeah. Then you're going to free yourself from it. You're going to come out smelling like a rose. All right? Unless you're allergic to roses. Then you could be smelling like jasmine or something. But anyway, thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope you have a marvelous rest of your Sunday, rest of your weekend, whatever you're doing, and whatever situation you're in. I love you all, and God bless. Bye-bye.
There's nothing but God's loving grace.